Feeling stuck or unfulfilled? Searching for more meaning in your work and life? Wondering what's next? You're not alone, and you're in the right place. This is Focus on Why, the podcast that turns reflection into action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and each week I dive deep with guests who've chosen to live and work with purpose. Together we explore what drives them, shapes their decisions, and gives their life meaning. Through real stories and honest conversations, you'll discover how to gain clarity, make confident choices, and create a life that truly matters. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Do you understand the power of a focus on why in business? Are your people truly engaged and finding meaning in their work? I deliver practical, interactive workshops that boost engagement, fulfillment, well-being, and purpose, all key drivers of higher productivity and performance. If you're ready to close your purpose gaps, reach out via the link in the show notes today. Today, on Focus on Why, I am joined by Larissa Astara Gray. What a fantastic name for a start. Before we even kick off, I've got a question. Tell me about that. And welcome.
Hi, Amy. Thank you for having me on. Yeah. So, Larissa Astara Gray. I changed my name in 2009 to Larissa Astara Gray. My birth name was Larissa Jane Meehan, and part of my journey through a lot of disempowerment led me to have what is known as a soul contract reading, and that is formulated or based on your birth name. And with the birth name Larissa Jane Meehan, I had a lot of disempowerment with it. So part of changing my name was part of claiming my power back. And I changed it to Larissa Astara Gray. Larissa, I love. I love the name Larissa, and it's a Greek name and it means cheerful. So I like that. And I think I am a cheerful person. And then Astara was a combination of Astra, which is the stars, and Tara, which in Buddhist traditions is a bodhisattva, which is an enlightened being that helps overcome difficulties and brings enlightenment. So it was a cheerful star goddess. And then Grey was a form of grace, but also grey to me is the balance. It's not black or not white. It is that grey area. It's where we meet in the middle. So it's a cheerful star goddess of grace, but it's about bringing balance and bringing, that enlightenment and that, I can't think of the word, but grace and transformation to the world.
And since 2009, how has it shifted, this change of name for you?
I can't say that it was straight out all guns blowing, but wow, it's been a transformational journey. It really has. And it was very, very important when I started doing my professional speaking that my name was Larissa Astara Gray. It wasn't Larissa Gray or just Larissa, it was Larissa Astara Gray. It was very, very important to me. And it's helped me transform in lots of ways. My younger life with my family and my family name was very, very disempowering. And so part of changing that name was taking my power back and saying that I actually don't want to be part of that toxicity. So it really was very shifting in a lot of ways. It rocks some boats because people don't like it when you claim your voice and your power back, but it was a necessity and it was very, very important. And so it's made a massive difference on a lot of levels.
I love that. And when you say it rocked some boats, was that close to you?
Yeah, the family. Well, it was kind of in a way denouncing them. But the interesting thing was when I had that initial soul contract reading, which was back in 2003, 2004, the soul contract reader said to me, "You have had a lot of abuse and disempowerment through your parents." And at that time, I was like, no, I've had an okay childhood. But actually, the abuse came in when when I was raped when I was 13. And I honestly, genuinely believed that at that point. 15 years more down the line through my healing journey, I realised, wow, I was abused by my parents. Not physically, not sexually, but emotionally and mentally. And also it was done with love, which was even harder to spot, because when I was growing up, I was not allowed to be me. So I wasn't allowed to have anything that I loved or do anything that I wanted to do. I had to play the violin, which my dad wanted me to do. I had to be a ballet dancer, which is what my mum wanted me to do. I had to read books because that's what she loved doing. I had to go to music school because they wanted me to be this musician. And that wasn't my life. That wasn't me. It wasn't anything that my soul or my heart wanted to do. So I did all of these things to try and get some sort of approval. And even doing those things, I didn't even get that approval anyway. So it was very, very disempowering and confusing. I also was an absolute mathematical genius. I was a straight A student with maths, but I've always struggled with English. I'm about to have a dyslexia assessment in a few weeks' time on the 7th of July. But I saw these patterns in my own son, and he's been tested and he has dyslexia. So I know I'm dyslexic. But because I was a straight A student with maths, they couldn't understand why I wouldn't do English. And so I was made to do English every Saturday morning or any opportunity to try and better my English, which of course was torture. And then when I started to get upset and angry because everything I wanted to do, I wasn't allowed to do, and I was suppressed and I couldn't do the English because I'm dyslexic, and I had these outbursts, then I was demonized for that and rejected for that. And I was told that we picked up the wrong child at the hospital. We don't know what's wrong with you. I was brain scanned at the age of 12. I was tested for all different abnormalities, allergies, all sorts of things. And there wasn't anything wrong with me. I just wasn't allowed to be me, and I wasn't allowed to be loved for being me.
Wow. So much to unpack there. And is it okay if I just call you Larissa for
Sure,
that? Yeah.
sure,
Okay, good.
sure. Yeah.
Great. You're wearing a t-shirt saying new you, and you've got a big star on. This journey is clearly an ongoing one. And this evolution of who Larissa Astara Gray is a lifelong journey. There are some things there that you just shared that I recognize from my own growing up in terms of living out other people's expectations or desires and dreams, but perhaps fulfilling those that they didn't have opportunities for other people in their life. And then as more and more opportunities become available, then it's wishing that for others. So as you say, it was done through love and also ignorance. I hear
Yeah, I
that.
mean, I totally get that they were trying to give me what they never had.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So, yeah, like you said, it's just with
Yeah.
ignorance. They didn't really understand what they were doing. And I completely get that.
Yeah.
Blaming
So
anybody. I'm just explaining where that toxicity had come from, and well, not toxicity, where the trauma had come from. But because the rape happened at 13, and then that took me down a very toxic trauma path, it took me like nearly 15-20 years of healing from all of that trauma before I even got to this core, trauma from my youth.
no, I hear you. And goodness, we usually start this podcast with what is it you're focusing on and we've gone down an entire different route already. So I'm going to bring it back
Yeah.
to that question. It may be that we dive deeper again on some things you've shared already, or that there is a relevance and a link to your question. But let's just start with, what is it you're focusing on right now, Larissa?
What I'm focusing on is my CIC called Better Boundaries. And I've set up Better Boundaries to help empower young people to have better boundaries around their sexuality, their personal space, so that they know what's okay and what's not okay, what are the mental and emotional effects of some of the toxicity that they're kind of fed every day. So it educates and protects them from online toxic sexual content, from social media, but also through pornography. But really, it's going into all sorts of aspects around sexual education, consent being the key.
I hear you. And clearly, this is work that has been stemmed from a lived experience.
Yeah, yes, yes. I was raped, my first rape, because there's been many, was at 13, and that was done in a lad culture way. I sat in a circle of girlfriends and we had a truth circle, and every single one of those girls told me that they'd lost their virginity. Oh my God, I didn't fit in, and I desperately wanted to fit in. I wanted to be part of the crowd. But after 20 odd years of working in therapy and working with lots of helping other people heal, I've never actually, Amy, met somebody that said to me, when I was younger at school, I really felt like I fitted in. That has never happened. I think nobody feels like they fit in, and that is normal and that's okay. And that's something that's really important that I emphasize to young people. There's nothing wrong with them. If they don't feel that they fit in, they're normal. It's good, healthy. But I wanted to fit in. So I said to the older guy that I was seeing at the time, who was about 17, that I was ready to go to the next level. But I was not ready to go to the next level. I was 13. I wasn't mentally or emotionally ready. And that's why we have that age of consent, because we are not developed fully. So that weekend, we went to a party. My friend's parents had gone away and we had a house party, and he got me into the downstairs bathroom and he said, right, you wanted to go to the next level. And I was like, not here, not now. What do you mean? You're a prick tease, you're just a wind up, and you've made me and that. And I froze. And he got me up against the wall, he put a condom on, lifted up my skirt, raped me, took the condom off, went out into the party, swinging it around, and all the lads were cheering, go on, son. And I was just left frozen in this toilet. My girlfriend came in and she said, are you okay? I said, no, he's just raped me. And she said, oh, well, he did that to another girl and she was called a slag and a slut and ostracized from the group. We can't upset the older boys. Come on, we just got to carry on with the party. And I just had to shut up, put up, and go back out into that party as if nothing had happened, because that was the best coping strategy. And that one event then took me into a downward spiral of things. And what's really important when I'm working with young people is that they understand what a non-consensual experience does, not only to the victim, but to the perpetrator. But I put up a little stick me, and then it has lots of different pictures that come up around that stick person. And it tells you what are all the things that happened to me because of that non-consensual experience. The shame, which Dr. Bream Brown says is the fear of not being good enough for connection. So instantly, I don't feel like I'm ever good enough for connection. Deep emotional pain. Why did I put myself in that situation? what is going on? My life's been destroyed. Deep self-hatred. I hated myself for what was happening, and feeling kind of so powerless and vulnerable. And then it made me take on negative beliefs, like I was unfit for human consumption, men just wanted me for sex, that I should accept violence, that I should put up and shut up, that I can't have a voice. And of course, that takes your voice away. I blamed myself because I didn't understand what trauma responses were, like the freeze response. It wasn't till about 15 years later that I really understood a freeze response, and I was able to forgive myself for that aspect. So I blamed myself. And I didn't understand what a fawning response was either, which is a tend and befriend response. And that's the response that I had to go into, where I just pretended everything was okay. And so I was defiled. My light, my beauty was taken away from me. I had no self-respect or no self-worth after that. That had been taken away from me. I didn't respect sex because that had just been taken away. So I was that person that if you wanted to have sex without a condom, yeah, that's fine. I'll just take the unwanted, the trip to the chemist for the morning after pill, or I'll take the trip to the STI clinic to pray that I haven't got a life sentence or a death sentence, and I'll take the unwanted pregnancy. And if you think rape's traumatic, and a termination is that on steroids, it's soul destroying. Yeah, so there were so many things that happened from that one event, and there's more, lots other things, but I go into those, and then I also talk about the effect that it has on the perpetrator, because nobody really talks about that. And that we are heart-centered beings, and we do have consciences, and these things will affect your self-worth, your self-esteem. When you've done something wrong to somebody else, and that will eat away at you on multiple levels. I've had guys get in touch with me and found me through social media to beg for forgiveness because now they have a daughter, and they realise that they never ever want something like that to happen to their daughter.
And you've set up this CIC, this community interest company. What is the mission that you want to achieve through that?
Well, many, many years ago, I decided that I wanted to write a sex education book and get it on the national curriculum, so that every young person had the tools and the understanding to have a happy, healthy, safe sexual relationships and interactions, empowered, and have their voice around sexuality. But life got in the way. I started that book and I will finish it, but life got in the way, and I got married and I had my son, and me and his father split up, which was quite a messy. It was my last toxic relationship. Well, it was my final rock bottom relationship. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's my last toxic relationship, because the last one was quite narcissistic too, but that helped me understand a lot of the narcissistic patterns that my father. Yeah, so I think now if I get into another relationship, I'll finally get a healthy one. But I really want young people to be able to have healthy relationships, because in 1937 Harvard University did a survey, the Gantt survey, and that survey is still going on today. And it's a survey, a study on happiness, and there's people from all different fields, some rich, some poor. I think there's an ex-president in there. There's all sorts of people in that survey. But the key to happiness is good relationships. And because of the trauma and the abuse that I've had, I've never been able to have a good, healthy relationship, which is something that I really want everybody else to be able to have. Yeah. So that is my mission with Better Boundaries. I don't know where I've gone off there, Amy, but
No, I mean, I get it. And the through line being this purposeful, meaningful understanding of what's driving you. I talk about purpose and why being interconnected but not the same. The why being the meaningful significance that you assign to your purpose, and the purpose is the overarching intention that guides your direction in life. So, from that perspective, explain to me the meaningful significance of your work.
I'd say the meaningful significance of my work is about two mission statements. And the first one is, let's change the way we talk about sex. I didn't have a voice. And I didn't have a voice around my sexuality, but I didn't kind of have a voice anyway through the fawning response that I learnt in order to cope with my parents. So I think it's really crucial to help empower young people, to give them their voices and to help them value themselves and understand themselves deeply and their trauma and everything in a way, so that they have their voices around their sexuality and they can protect themselves and empower themselves with that through consent conversations, through, we've been taught so much around relationships that we don't have honest, open communication, that we just play games, and we are kind of lucky to be chosen by somebody or not. It's, especially for myself as a woman, growing up in the 1970s and early 80s, the imprinting coming from the television programs around that. We had Benny Hill, we had Kenny Everett, we had Carry On Camping and stuff, and it was very beautiful, pretty young girls running around doing anything they could to get attention off men. Yeah. And we had a lot of also imprinting coming in from music lyrics as well. When I listen back to some of the 80s music, I'm like, oh my God, that was just going in, that you should just accept this sort of stuff. And so we're not taught to have our voices and our value in any way. So that is the biggest thing, to change that narrative around sexuality and take it out of that taboo, we can't go there energy, and bring it into that important, respectful, open, empowered conversation around it, which just frees everybody. Because that old energy, nobody wins. This manipulation, game playing, why would you want to be with somebody because you've had to manipulate them into doing it? It's not feeding anybody's soul or their it's only feeding negative ego patterns that are going to destroy you and take you down. And then my second mission statement for Better Boundaries is making sure that sex is safe in every way. And that is really what I want to achieve. We've reached a crisis point, Amy, in society around sexuality. 1 in 4 women have been raped over the age of 16, and many, many more under the age of 16. 1 in 20 men. And I don't think that these levels are acceptable. If you think about everything that I said that happens to you when you're raped, that's happening to 1 in 4 of our women. Look at how much disempowerment we're talking here. And 1 in 20 men. And then, of course, you've got the disempowerment of being the perpetrator of that as well. So that's how, if you look at it, it's destroying hundreds of thousands of lives, millions of lives. I think it's 6.5 million girls have been raped over the age of 16.
The stats are staggering, absolutely staggering, and so upsetting. Now, you've got a son. How old is he, Larissa?
He's 11.
11. What does he understand about your work right now?
He understands that I'm a sex education speaker, positive sex education speaker, and that I'm changing the way that people feel around sexuality. So, and relationships as well, not just sexuality, it's relationships as well. So the other day I overheard him and his friend talking about crushes. And so I thought, oh, great, this has given me some something to talk to him about. So I said to him, Amir, what does it mean to have a crush on somebody? He went, oh, I haven't got a crush on anybody. That was my friend. And yeah, I don't think I want to be having this conversation with you, Mom. And I went, this is exactly why we need to be having this conversation, Amir. I said, look at the shame you've got around just having a crush on somebody. You know, shame is the fear of not being good enough for connection. And you are so worth connection. You are so worthy of the right connection. So what does, you know, you need to talk about this. So what does having a crush on somebody mean to you? And he said, well, what does it mean to you, Mom? And I said, okay, well, to me, to have a crush on somebody, their values need to be aligned with mine. Their worldview, to a certain extent, needs to be in alignment with how I see things. I need to feel that their soul energy's on the right vibe for me, that they're intellectually on my level, that we have a good, you know, I like their physical connection, you know, appearance too. But it's everything. It's not just a physical attraction. You know, if you do that, that's like objectification. And that's not where you want to go. I said, would you ever want somebody just to want you because of the way you look and not because of your humor, your energy, your values? No. So, and he said, no. I said, no. So, you know, when the other boys say, oh, I've got a crush on so-and-so, ask them why. Why do you like them? Okay, and really make them think about that, you know? Because objectification is just, it's in your face constantly on television, on programs, on social media. You know, the poor young girls, like my son's just been away on a PGL, and the girls at 11 are going through vigorous face mask and beauty routines and stuff.
Wow. I mean, this is like the younger version of sex education here that I'm listening to, you know, in terms of instead of Otis being like a 16, 17-year-old, you've got the previous iteration of him and you're like the Gillian Anderson in the house here.
But it's just age appropriate conversations. You know,
Yeah.
people think I'm a positive sex education speaker. That must mean that she's pushing sex and she wants everybody to have sex. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. What I'm actually wanting everybody to do is slow down, slow right down. Make sure you know what you're getting into, that you value yourself, that you put everything in a safe container, that you feel comfortable having. If you're not comfortable having a consent conversation, you're not ready for sex. Simple as. You know, if you haven't got the balls or the, you know, the courage to say, right, you know, would you go to the hairdressers, Amy, and say, do whatever you want to me? Or would you get into a business relationship without finding out all about that other business, whether it's a long-term or a short-term arrangement, if it's going to be beneficial for both, where's it going? You find out everything before you do that. But people don't do that when it comes to their most intimate and most precious things, you know, relationships and sexuality. You know, and so encouraging them to have those conversations, that's the forefront, and examining all the different aspects of relationships is just key.
This perpetuation of the way that sex is perceived and is shown through TV, through social media, through advertising and marketing. And I mean, it comes down to just how much money sex creates.
But I'd say the word sex that you're using there, to me, is a performative thing. It's a creative, performative thing. And that's not what real sexuality is. That's not what real connection and intimacy is at all. So we've been fed this very, very toxic view of what sexuality is, which is objectification, control, dominance, performance. And that's so far away from what true intimacy is, which is safety, care, consideration, respect, honesty. And actually, what that does is it empowers and it expands both parties. The other stuff is limiting, it's constrictive, it's disempowering, it's everything we don't want it to be.
No, I hear you. And I mean, we haven't even talked about the porn industry. I mean, you mentioned it very briefly earlier. I mean, this is a huge industry.
Yeah. It's a huge toxic cesspool. I'm sorry, that's what it has become, especially hardcore porn. You watch a normal film and you'll have a warning on it saying no actors or animals or actresses have been harmed during the filming of this. That's not the case with hardcore pornography. Whatever you see is being done to that person is actually being done. And so much of it, so 88% of pornography is violent against women. And also, it's estimated that up to about 50% of online pornography is human and sex trafficking. So you're not actually even watching prostitution, you're watching live abuse.
Just need to let that sink in for a moment, don't you? I watched a film recently. It was The Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel. And the closing credits of that film include some horrendous statistics around the pornography industry and sex trafficking and child trafficking.
Yeah, yeah. Because I want to bring so much awareness around porn education, I set up Porn Education Awareness Week in January this year, and it didn't go as big as I wanted it to. I wanted it to go viral and I wanted the mainstream news to pick it up, but it didn't. But hopefully next year it will. That's one of my goals. But there's 5 aspects of education around pornography that each day focused on. So the first day was the effect that it has on viewers. So that's body image, incorrect sexual messaging, what it actually does to us and the brain and the addiction, not necessarily the addiction side, but how it encapsulates us and gets us in. Day 2 was the excessive and problematic use. Some people don't like the phrase porn addiction. They say that it's not a thing, that they're actually just addicted to sex, but I disagree with that in a way, because they are addicted to a screen. They're not really addicted to the sex because it's not actually happening with them. And then day 3 was the effect that pornography has on the actors and the actresses, the performers. Day 4 was social media's impact and how the algorithms are sending young people a lot of toxic images and holding them accountable. And then day 5 was the trafficking, the human trafficking and the ethical side of it, and what we need to be aware of when we're engaging. And I interviewed a different specialist for each one of those days and did a podcast. And on day 5, I interviewed a lady who was trafficked into hardcore pornography at 14. She'd been trafficked into a brothel at age 11 by her father, who was a pastor. And then by 14, she was too old for the brothel. So she was then trafficked into the pornography industry. And she was not alone in that. There was a lot of girls being trafficked into it around her. And that, she's an amazing woman. Read her book, Jewel Baraka. She's amazing. Coming of age on a porn set, I think her book is. But she's a great advocate for a lot of this work to bring awareness around it. But it's happening, it happens a lot. And Exodus Cry is another I think they're a charity in America that I've followed them for about 15, 16 years, probably a bit longer than that. And they do such a lot of work in this field. And on their website, some of the films that you can watch, High Class is their latest one, about actually how these high class prostitutes are just being pimped out and they actually don't make any money. And a lot of that is put onto online content as well. Then Hardcore, which is a film all about the hardcore porn industry and how some of the male hardcore actors just literally their objective is to destroy the women, to just totally destroy them.
I'm gobsmacked, and it's partly through just, I mean, I knew that this is a big industry, but I didn't know just quite to what extent there was the lack of consent in, particularly in the actual
I mean,
industry.
there are some people that do quite well with it. The ex actor that I interviewed for the Performers Day, he had to give up because he was rushed into hospital 3 times because of erectile injections going wrong, and 90% of porn actors use erectile drugs for performance enhancement. Because if you think about it, it is prostitution. They're having to have sex with somebody that they're not actually sexually attracted to. Occasionally they will have a sexual attraction to that person, but most of the time they don't. So they have to take erectile drugs in order to do what they're doing. And long term, they don't work anymore. And then they have to move on to injecting things. And then that really, so that made him stop. But he's worked then as a producer and done other things. But he has just, he was very porn positive in his younger life. But now he's seen so many people, actors, that are stuck in the industry because they can't get out, and there's a lot of addiction associated with that, a lot of self-hatred. It's not as nice as people think at all. I'd encourage anybody to watch my podcast with him. It was Christopher Zydgeg. Sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong, but and that's on my Better Boundaries YouTube channel.
I'll make sure that link goes into the show notes so that the listener can reach out and find that particular episode. Larissa, this is such a big topic, and I don't know how much the social media ban is going to help your work. It's going to obviously aid it in some respects because of the age of consent being 16. And so hopefully so many young people and children are not going to be exposed to all of these contributing factors.
The younger children are going to be impacted from that more than my son's age and above, because they've grown up on YouTube already and things like that. So they're going to go through a kind of like withdrawal phase. But there's young kids that know about VPNs. They're more tech savvy than we are. He knows more on how to do things on a phone than I do, or on an iPad. I have, because of what I do and the talks that I've been part of around smartphone free childhood, and some of my good friends are social media educators in school, so I'm very aware. So my settings on his phone, on his devices, are locked down. He doesn't have access to the internet. He can only go on the internet with me around him. But he'll be out with his friends after school. Their phones aren't locked down. They're just given a phone. 52% of kids are given phones without any security on them. There you go. There's access to every dark corner of the world that you can think of. There you go. So I was very mindful. But even with him, I said, look, the social media bans come in. What are you going to do? He says, I'm going to ignore it. Because he likes his YouTube. He likes watching hockey on there and he likes those things. So, and I think that will be the attitude of a lot of the older ones that haven't Yeah. So education still is the key, Amy, what I'm trying to say here. They will get their phones when they're 16. Like the Online Safety Act, as far as I'm concerned, the Online Safety Act is sending out a message that pornography is okay when you're 18. No, it's not okay. We need to educate on this. We need to take our power back on it. And we need to educate our young people so that they're not making unhealthy choices. Strangulation has now become a vanilla aspect of sexuality. This is your most precious thing here. You've got your voice, which is your consent to start with. You've also got your vagus nerve here, which is the head of the nervous system. It controls every other autonomic system in the body, the digestion, the respiratory, everything like that. And of course, breath is life. That goes too far, the strangulation in sex, you're dead. Then you're a murderer. And these things sadly have happened. But with young people seeing toxic sexuality and thinking that that's just normal, and of course, SEND children are more vulnerable to that kind of thing because they actually think, oh, it's on the screen, that's okay, that's how it should be. And you've got young people now wanting to experiment with strangulation and anal and things like that without the right education and understanding of it at all.
How are we going to get to the point where this is not the norm, not the current situation? How is this work going to be achieved? I mean, you said yourself that you wanted it to go viral, your education week, but it didn't. And you are one person here. What is it that you would like to see happen across families, schools, countries?
Well, I've just put a proposal in for my local, the assistant director of education locally, that I go in and deliver talks to all the parents, CPD to all the teachers, and direct classes to 16 plus sixth form level, because it is a grey area with sexuality, and different religions have very different beliefs, but it's in our society. And the Children's Commissioner, her report of August last year was actually entitled "Sex is kind of broken now," and she's the person that's looking after our young people. And she said that 44% of the kids, there's about 50% of young people are seeing pornography by the age of 13, but 44% of them had seen scenes of rape and abuse. Yeah, and 44% of the children agreed with the statement, if a girl says no, she can be turned around. Yeah, so we've got a bigger problem. So parents might go, oh no, my child doesn't need to know this and this, that, and the other. But actually, they're probably watching it or seeing it anyway. I know for a fact, my local comprehensive here in Solihull, in Knoll, Arden, children are sexually active from 14. Some of them, not all of them. But if we don't educate properly, we're failing those 50% that are seeing this and the 50% that are actively seeing. And if we do the right education, you're not tarnishing them, you're empowering them, and you're helping, giving them value and giving them their voice so that they are prepared for when they are ready. It's not about pushing them into it. Like I said before, it's the opposite, and it's getting them to really think that this is a really deep experience, and you need to get it right. How I say it is, their English, their maths, their science, if they get those wrong, it doesn't really matter. They can restudy and they can do it again. If they get sex wrong, it can mess their life up, somebody else's life, or create a life. It's the most important subject that they're going to learn, which is going to have such a long-term impact on their emotional and mental health.
I agree. And with that note, what is the best way for people to reach out and connect and continue this conversation with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I have two websites, betterboundaries.co.uk, larissaastaragray.co.uk. I'm on Instagram. I also host a weekly radio show called Better Boundaries on Vibe 25 Radio. You can listen to that on DAB or on the internet. And I talk about all different types of issues around relationships and sex. Last week I was talking about cheating and how cheating can impact perpetrators and victims. And this week I've got a specialist on who's talking about, oh, this will go out after this, but yeah, I have different experts, and she helps women recover from narcissistic relationships. So yeah.
Well, all those links again are in the show notes. So head there to go and connect or listen or follow what Larissa is doing and support her, support this work. We cannot expect change to happen with one person doing all of this work. This is going to take
And with my
entire.
CIC, Amy, with my CIC, I'm very open to any financial support as well, because I'm starting to write bids and get stuff because I can't do it on my own. I need support. And if anybody's been affected by anything that I've talked about and they think, wow, this is something that I want to support, please do get in touch with me.
I hope they do. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your focus on why with us today, because my goodness, this work is so needed. And yeah, if I can do my bit by sharing it on the platform, which is what we're doing right now, then I feel like that's one step towards a better outcome. So thank you. Do you have some final words, please, for the listener?
It's really that we're all amazing. We're all stars in our own right, and we need to be helped to see that stardom within ourselves, to value ourselves, to love ourselves, to express ourselves in healthy and safe and right ways. And so I just want everybody to shine and be the stars that they are.
That's a wrap for today, but the journey doesn't end here. Share your takeaways, leave a review, or post your insights. Your voice helps others discover the value of these stories. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for ways to work with me. Get a copy of my book or to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter packed with clarity and inspiration. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.